This video is a response to Vince Venturella and his topic of the week, optional and alternative game rules. Um, in Vince's video, which I will link down below, he mostly talks about um, competing rules systems that might appeal to different types of gamers that maybe are more external to the rules, things that are more a bolt-on perhaps. My video is going to be mostly about the variety of rules that are kind of inherent within AoS. And those are really designed to meet the needs of different gamers. So there are basically three ways to play within Age of Sigmar. This came out with the General's Handbook, of course, and it'll be within the 8th edition 40k that is upcoming as well. And so this is open narrative and matched that really meet the needs of different gamers and different styles of play. So reading from the General's Handbook, at the very beginning, in the section entitled The Many Faces of War, it states that this flexible system ensures that whether you are just getting started or have decades of experience, everyone can find a style of play that suits them. There's no right way to play Warhammer Age of Sigmar, so long as everyone adheres to the most important rule. The connection to that rule, which has been in every single edition of Warhammer that I can recall, really is a very strong association, and it helps to formulate a mutual consensus among all players. You can often sit down with someone that is playing the same game in a different manner, has a different perspective on how the rules are operating. And in the same way that the three ways to play accommodate different play styles, the most important rule is kind of how they can be coherently how people with different attitudes towards the game can make the game work, essentially. I don't think it matters that match play might outweigh the other two methods of playing in popularity. That seems to be the case. But I don't think it's relevant whatsoever. The potential to play the game using open, narrative, or matched was really there in previous editions, but they have never been so clearly stated as in the current and upcoming rules. Codifying the three ways to play really allows you to play the game as you desire, and your personal interests are not necessarily superior or universal to those of other gamers. Consider someone who wants to teach the game to someone who's new, or someone who is very young, or a friend who is exploring the hobby for the first time. In those circumstances, open play might be the most appropriate. Likewise, someone that simply wants to tell a story has every right to play the game in a narrative manner and ignore any of the restrictions imposed by match play. After all, war is almost never balanced or perfectly matched, and not everyone wants to compete against someone in a very competitive environment when you're playing the game. They don't need to be high-strung games. You can play in Warhammer, you can play in a spectrum of extremely casual to extremely competitive. And, everyone has a right to play on that spectrum wherever they want. The system as it currently stands in AoS is designed to accommodate both those that really want to carefully design their armies based upon the most effective tactic available, and those that simply want to roll dice or envision a developing story. Besides ink and space within the book, I honestly cannot think of a way that having multiple ways to play is negative or bad for the game and the community as a whole. Other optional rules include the decision to either roll or select spells and artifacts. Again, it really depends on the type of game you want to play. You could argue negatively that every chart must be a multiple of 6 to accommodate random rolls. But that's a fairly insignificant concern. Allowing choice means that you can tailor your army and game to suit your needs. It's not even a choice between being random competitive, as you can narratively choose trait spells and artifacts that match a narrative. That ability to have either option, depending on how you want to design your individual specific game or your specific gaming event, is a positive thing. It allows for all the different spectrum of games to really exist at the same time. So other optional rules might include the decision to measure base to base or stipulate that round bases must be required. Again, these choices are reflective of the individual needs of gamers. Base to base is an important component of competitive gaming, but for casual or narrative play, it's less important. As for round bases, it's largely a community decision case by case. And for casual gamers, there's really no rule against either way. Allowing base shape is the most inclusive choice on the part of Games Workshop. And that's not unusual because they've almost never really stipulated any rules regarding base sizes that I can really remember. Previous editions, the models came on squares if you're playing 8th edition, but I don't think it ever said in the rules that they must be square. GW in general avoids really any type of rules regarding bases. Someone who's played for a long time, I still have plenty of Terminators on 28mm rounds that would be certainly probably not illegal in a casual gaming sense, but extremely unusual to use those types of models now in the current rules for 40K. So I don't want to see too many different rules or optional systems exclusively for one group of gamers or another. I don't mind if there is one or two that do appeal to match play or open play or narrative play exclusively. But I think that they need to be a fairly balanced release where they all have the potential, the option to play with those rules in the way that they would like it to do, or have a few individual releases that are each designed for it. Because I always think it's important to recognize that we are a diverse community, and that even though we play the same game, we don't necessarily play it the same way. We can sit down from a complete stranger and play Warhammer fairly effectively, but my opponent, or he or she might be coming to the table from a extremely competitive mindset. Everything in their army is tailored to be the most optimal choice. That's not how I design my army. And if we sit down apart from one another without having that conversation, we're going to necessarily walk away with different attitudes about how the game really went. It always, one of the most examples in my mind is I brought a reasonably competitive army for 8th edition to the local gaming club, and I played against someone I'd never played before. And he designed an army that I would never design. It's not that I can't design a competitive list, or that I am unable to do Math Hammer or something like that. It's just he made choices that I wouldn't select because it broke the narrative of that specific army. He's combining things that I would never do. Okay? And we both sat down and we played a game. Actually, we played 2 games of 8th edition, 2,000 points, in under an hour. Okay? That's how terrible my army performed compared to his. And so, it's important to recognize, I watch a lot of YouTube for people that play 8th or ninth, and they're playing the game much differently than I would have played. Much differently than how I played during 8th. So, even though we're all using the same rule set, 8th edition, which didn't have a lot of variety or options or choices, there's still a spectrum of how people are using those rules to express themselves in the game. And so I think having different options available to AoS, I think it's a really good thing. It's baked in. It doesn't really matter to me that one is more popular. I mean, heck, even I have focused more on the matched component of the General's Handbook than open or narrative. And I haven't even played a game of points yet. So it's kind of a weird type of system, but like I'm in a position where I can kind of appreciate the skill set and the gaming mentality of a variety of different gamers, even though my personal preference might be in a different area. I've always associated finding the right opponents with similar, or at least compatible attitudes to your own as one of the most crucial steps to becoming a happy gamer. It's important that rules can accommodate that spectrum of gamers, and that they can be accepted without being marginalized. If you don't have an open play during 8th, to play without points would have been bizarre. But since open play is a third of the General's Handbook, I don't think it would be that strange to see someone play an open play, even if that's not something that you might do that often. I think you can at least appreciate that, or at least accept that other gamers are or at least what other gamers are doing without adopting the same attitude towards the game yourself. That's basically what I have to say in this topic. I mean, I can't honestly think of a way in which these things would be wholly negative. Is it an annoyance or minor irritation that these options are available to some people? Maybe. But I just can't see that being that important to certainly not want the options to be there. So I see the level of complexity building in AoS to some extent. And that's something I really want to talk about in an upcoming video. In either case, thanks for tuning in, and have a good one.